Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our meeting now on 15th. And today it's a special day because we have taken up a topic that's quite relevant for us. But before that, I will make a very short introduction to what has happened last week in particular. We conducted 2 workshops yesterday. In the morning, one was for key features of good governance for adults, and fair number of teachers participated locally from Margona and principals as well. And then the afternoon, we conducted the workshop for children about the risks and also train them on basic resuscitation skills. And we've had exceptionally good feedback, which I will share with you at a later date. And both things were recorded, and the records will come to you. It will take a little time because they're very long, and come to you in about a day or two. So that was a very good success, and I'm very pleased, and I'm very thankful for all the resource people who made fantastic talks and gave real key advices to our Sri Lankans as a whole. Two very important kind of a motto came around this meeting. First one was your participation and the resource people who are contributing. We all are working not for Leeds, but to help our motherland. That's one of the things that came up. So your mission is that to help motherland, and this is one of the platforms. That's basically it. And the second one was, we only have one motherland, which was really a good thing that we should always remember. So this actually kind of the message that came from workshops yesterday, which I thought was fantastic. And Leeds is your platform. Today is also Thaipongal, and it's a celebration that takes place, and we do wish the devotees, and it's mainly to thank the sun, Mother Nature, and the various animals who help us get a bountiful harvest. So that's there today in Sri Lanka as well. Then recently, we started seeing reports like this, like Russia proposes 2 mini nuclear power stations in Sri Lanka. Then there were other articles that has appeared recently as well, like the one on the right. So I'm not a medical expert, but then I looked into it a little bit so that I had to make a background for everybody else to discuss. And I'm no expert in this at all. So this article came from Dr. Janaka Ratnasiri and published on Counterpoint LK, and discuss about the imported fuel that is needed for power generation in Sri Lanka. So this is the graph. So out of the total energy, 42% of the power is generated by oil. So the rest is hydro is that much, coal is that much, and so on. So you can see, and there's biomass here as well. So you can see that 42% of kind of energy that we get, actually, this depends on the imported fuel. Okay, so nuclear reactor, I have absolutely no clue about this, but I thought I'll put a picture. There is a core here, which is quite sensitive and has to be looked after very well. There's a steam separator, etc., and there's a water that keeps this cool. And those things are crucially important right the way through, whatever the weather, whatever the situation, whatever the country, etc. So that's one of the things I learned looking at this. I'm kind of completely clueless about this, but what I'm saying is what is coming from what I've learned from looking into the literature a little bit, and then there'll be the experts to speak afterwards. So looking at nuclear power plants, I'm only reporting there were very severe disasters in relation to 2 of them. Chernobyl disaster, this was in 1986 in Ukraine. And during a safety test, this accident occurred. 100 died on the spot, 35,000 people were evacuated. And one of the most severe nuclear accidents in the world, rated as the 7th, that's the top. And the decontamination alone of the environment cost $68 billion US. So the next one is Fukushima nuclear disaster in Japan on March 2011. And that was due to the earthquake and tsunami. And the evacuation zone was 12 miles. And this cannot be decontaminated for 30 to 40 years. And that area is not suitable for living. And the situation is this kind of nuclear contamination have health effects, particularly miscarriages, stillbirths, and genetic defects of children. Sri Lanka, we all know we've hit an economic crisis about a year ago, and we got a dollar problem. There was a fuel problem, and there was a power crisis as a result. Now you can see why we had a power crisis. No dollars was the reason for power crisis. So there were no imports. So that's the problem. So then we had no petroleum. So there was no power. But the question arises, if you put uranium in there, uranium, we don't produce that. We have to import that as well. Now, will that resolve the power crisis? And our economic crisis is one of the questions that will rise. So pros and cons, this is just from literature. Pros, people argue it's carbon-free electricity. Small land footprint is required, high power output, reliable energy source. The people who are contradict saying uranium is technically non-renewable, very high upfront costs, nuclear waste is a problem, and malfunctions can be catastrophic. So there are 10 big disadvantages that's been listed, but all kind of balance kind of action is required. Raw material, which is uranium, has many safety measures, and then, and also you don't want it to go into the wrong hands, number one. Number two, fuel availability. Apparently, it's a very lengthy process because uranium is a scarce resource and therefore there's a demand. So that's another issue. High cost of building it. The nuclear option may not be viable for majority of countries. That is the general consensus that the world has. And they also take about 5 to 10 years to build it. Then the nuclear waste and properly containing nuclear waste is another issue because it's radioactive byproduct. Then the risk of shutdown reactors. So if the reactors are shut down, these facilities are too large and unstable to remove. Then the impact of human life, which I've described already. And nuclear power is a non-renewable resource because the limited supply of uranium and nuclear power is classified as non-renewable. It's at production, it's a clean form of energy. It doesn't produce CO2. But however, another argument against nuclear power lies in the risk of the misuse of nuclear energy, such as production of weapons and bombs. So that is there. Then the Association of Professional Sri Lankans in the UK issued a statement about 3 weeks ago. And some of this is already published in some Sri Lankan papers. So just a brief to say what they said. They said the carbon dioxide is emitted during uranium mining and purification, long years of building the power station with metal and concrete, and decommissioning of the power station at the end. So it's not really a green energy. That's one argument. Two is the building cost, which we mentioned about takes about 5 years, and decommissioning takes 30 years. The decommissioning cost is more than the commissioning cost. Then nuclear waste problems, again, we mentioned, and Chancellor of Germany, whom we know is a really patriotic leader who Germany had, and she has made a decision to close down all 17 nuclear power plants in Germany. Now, she is a PhD in physics, but that's not the point. The point is what was the debate here? Why did she close it down? Is it just nuclear or something else? So these are kind of information that we want if we want to make a balanced view. Sri Lanka also has many other forms of power and fossil fuel that is imported. So do we really need nuclear energy is another question. So we have problems or debates in relation to finances, the cost, the benefits, the risks, and the maintenance costs, etc. And today we are going to have an open forum, just see the pros and cons. And for this, I've got 2 people who are going to make short presentations. And Professor Lakshman Disanayake, whom we know, and also a scientist from Kandy, will also make a presentation after the 2 speakers. So I think Preenath Dias is going to go first. And I will briefly describe both of them because you will see the relevance. Srinath Dias was a former associate professor and head of the Department of Electrical Engineering of University of Moratuwa. He's a former chairman of the Atomic Energy Authority of Sri Lanka and a former professional staff member of the International Atomic Energy Agency. He has a PhD in nuclear engineering from Texas and visiting associate professor in nuclear engineering at University of California. So he's got a track record and he is knowledgeable, obviously, about atomic energy, and we do need to hear from them. Malinda Ranavira is the scientific officer currently, and he will be able to enlighten us so much. And he is in the International Cooperation Division, Sri Lanka Atomic Energy Board, National Liaison Assistant to IAEA as well. But most importantly, he is the head who's the project management unit to study the nuclear power option in Sri Lanka. He is well qualified to talk about this. He is a master in business administration from University of California, postgraduate diploma in nuclear science, and postgraduate diploma in diplomacy and world affairs in Bandaranaike, and BSc honors degree, and professional qualification in relation to nuclear energy. He's a fellow, World Nuclear University Summer Institute from Oxford, and he's a fellow in the School of Nuclear Energy Management in Italy. So Malinda is there. I believe Prinath is going to go first. So I'll stop my slides and I'll let Prinath take over. Prinath, you can take, share your slides. Yeah, thank you. Well done. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Professor, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. When I got the invitation from through Bernard, I was wondering what I should speak on because it's such a broad topic. And finally, I thought I will just focus on a few salient points, knowing that it's a forum, more time should be given for discussion. So I thought I'll make it a very short presentation, touching on a few salient points, which would help us in our discussions. So Professor, you have given a very good introduction. I don't know whether actually something more is needed from me.
No, I'm a layperson. I'm a layperson. I'm not an expert. So it's just open the forum. That's all.
Thank you, Professor. But you picked up the key points. So let me continue. Now, the first point I would like to make is you can't look at nuclear power in isolation. It is just one of the several sources of energy available for power generation. So when you say you are considering nuclear power, you are really seeing whether it is one of the power plants you need to consider in the optimal mix of power sources required for power generation. Now, in electrical power system, what you need is not just one particular type of energy sources which you consider as the best, but you need an optimal mix of so many different types of energy sources because each power plant has its own economic and technical characteristics. What is required is to optimize the types of power plants you need to use based on economic, environmental, and other factors. Now, there's a way of doing it, which is done by the electrical power system, Ceylon Electricity Board. It's called Electrical Power System Expansion Planning. It is carried out using well-established technologies which have been developed by the International Atomic Energy Agency and used by so many countries. So they prepare the plan, which is updated every year. So the current plan is for 2022 to 2041. And this plan does not identify nuclear power as a possible source in their base case. They have studied so many different scenarios, but what they consider as the base case does not identify nuclear power as an option. So that is the first issue. I've given the link to this report, which is a very useful report. It contains a lot of information. So unless the CEB decides, because CEB is at least at present, CEB is the national authority responsible for power generation in Sri Lanka. Unless they decide, now this is an option for us in the future, it is not going to happen. But there are the issues which I will touch on in my next slide. Now, one key factor is there's a very strong dependence between electrical energy consumption and economic development, which is not really well understood, I think, by our policy planners. Without electrical energy, you cannot develop a country. Now, what this shows is a plot of GDP versus per capita consumption of electricity of various countries. So some countries have a very high GDP and a fairly high per capita consumption. Some countries use it more efficiently than the others. And Sri Lanka is here. So if we want to develop our economy, if we want to make it at least a developed country where the people of this country can meet their basic necessities, in time to come, we are going to need more electrical energy. This can be also seen from this. This is a graph of the situation in Korea. The yellow graph is the per capita GDP growth in Korea from 1970 to 2014, and the black one is per capita consumption. I should have updated it up to 2020, but I couldn't. But it shows that the relationship between the two, it's almost identical. The growth rate of the GDP very closely followed the per capita consumption of electrical energy. So one key factor is if the Ceylon Electricity Board has used a growth rate of 5% for their future projection. But if our economy improves, I know in the current situation, it's not something that we could even envisage, but if this country is to develop in the future, our economic growth should be more, and our electricity, the need for electrical energy could be more than 5%. The growth rate could be more than 5%. So that is one factor to be considered. If our country is going to develop economically at a higher rate, our electrical demand for electricity is going to increase at a higher rate. And whether that could be a factor to be considered when we decide on the future electricity scenario. Then the other factor is some recent developments in advanced reactors, which are known as generation 3+ reactors. The current reactors which are in operation are known as generation 2. And these reactors have smaller capacities. Many of them are less than 300 megawatt. They could be as small as 60 megawatt. They require a smaller capital investment because of the smaller size, and also their cost per installed capacity is lower. Modular design, and they have a high degree of shop fabrication. The current power plants, all the components are brought into the site and assembled. In these plants, there's a high degree of fabrication. The whole reactor can be constructed in the workshop of the vendor and brought to site. As a result, the construction period is fairly small, 3 to 4 years, whereas current reactors take more than minimum of 6 years, but in many countries it takes about 10 years. And these reactors have a greater flexibility in siting, high efficiency, and one key factor is they have passive safety features. Now, current nuclear reactors depend on the operators for safe operation, but these reactors contain passive safety features. Even without an intervention of the operators, the reactor can be safely shut down and cooled. But these plants are still under development. Only 3 plants are in operation at present, 7 are under construction. There are various types of reactors, about 50 at the design stage. So if these plants become available, if they prove to be economical as claimed, then that also could be a factor that could change the situation. So that is another factor to be considered. Now, this is one such reactor. This is called a new-scale modular reactor. The whole reactor plant, what Professor mentioned yesterday, the reactor is here, the fuel is here, the steam generators and the coolant pumps all are built into one unit, whereas current reactors have them as separate they are separated. Here they have the whole thing in one single unit, which can be brought to the site and installed in a pool like this. And these modules can be added as your demand increases. These modules can be added to meet the demand. So this one advantage. And compared with that, this is what a conventional nuclear power plant, that's what a nuclear plant in operation looks like now. This is a plant in operation in China. So the reactor is here, and these are the steam generators, and the pumps are also somewhere around here, and you have the separate turbine building over there. So when you just look at the simplicity of the two types of plants, the advanced plants are much easier to operate and maintain compared with the generation 2 or the plants that are currently in operation. Now, when you look at the economics, of course, you cannot, it's one of the key factors. I tried to convert, I obtained some value, the figures from the OECD, and I tried to convert it to rupees per kilowatt hour using a conversion rate of 350 rupees per US dollar. I think it's a little higher now. And the costs vary quite significantly from country to country. And also it depends on the discount rate and the discount rate used for the calculation. So I have given the values for several countries at 3 discount rates. And there's a wide variation. It could go from 9.59 in Russia at 3% discount rate up to about 51 rupees in Slovakia at 10% discount rate. But I would say these are competitive with the other alternatives we have. We can't clearly say nuclear power is cheaper than the other options, but they could be competitive with the other options we have. But there's one key factor that is favorable for nuclear power, that is the dependence on fuel is very small. The cost of generation, the dependence on the cost of generation, on the cost of fuel is very small compared with cost of coal and compared with coal and gas. So if there are any future increases in the cost of fuel, it will shield the increase in cost of generation in nuclear power plants to a great extent than in a coal power plant or a gas power plant. So this is one factor that is favorable to nuclear power. Once you construct the plant, you can be assured that future costs increases of fuel will not have a significant effect on the cost of generation. Another factor is, since the amount of fuel that you need is fairly small, it's like 30 tons for a large nuclear reactor, compared with about 2 million tons for a similar coal power plant, you can stockpile fuel and you do the refueling once a year. And in the new plants, it could be even more. So it's possible to stockpile fuel for a longer period of time and to ensure stability of supply and also to reduce the cost. So you will not have a situation like waiting for the next shipment of coal to come in to start run your plant. Now, safety, Professor mentioned about the accidents. There have been 3 accidents in nuclear power plants in the recent past. That's an accident in 3 Mile Island in 1979, which was caused by inability to remove decay heat. One problem with nuclear power plants is, unlike other power plants, if you have a problem, you shut down a coal power plant, you eliminate the heat source. But in a nuclear reactor, even if you stop the fission reaction, even if you stop the chain reaction, it will continue to generate heat because of the decay of radioactive fission products. So you have to, that decay heat could be 5 to 10% of what it was generating earlier. So unless you remove the decay heat, it could lead to melting of the fuel. So this was a problem at 3 Mile Island, but there were no environmental effects, but there was a very severe, well, there was an economic loss. In Chernobyl, caused by a reactivity excursion due to some actions taken by the operators, there were 50 deaths immediately, mainly the firefighters. And they estimate there will be another 5,000 additional cancer deaths in the long term. It's an estimate made by several international agencies. But the economic loss, as Professor Chula mentioned, was very large. And still they're spending money to maintain the plant, which is enclosed in a sarcophagus, and still they're spending money. Fukushima, again, the environmental effect was not so large, but the economic loss is again very large. So now one question, of course, we have to ask ourselves, like Professor mentioned, is whether we could afford this kind of a situation by any chance. Although the probability of an accident, I would say, is very small, especially with the new kinds of nuclear power plants. Whether this is a risk we can take is a major factor that we need to take into consideration. In deciding on nuclear power, we'll have several constraints to overcome, even if the CEB decides, based on their expansion plan, that nuclear power is an option for the future. There are several constraints we'll have to overcome. I think one major constraint will be the public opposition. We remember the opposition the public of Sri Lanka had about construction of coal power plants. And we could imagine the kind of opposition they would have for a nuclear power plant. So my personal experience was when I was at the Atomic Energy Authority, we tried to construct a building for that Atomic Energy Authority, a new building with a small laboratory. But people in the area where around the site that we identified for the project had a very strong opposition. And we had to move elsewhere. So if that is the kind of opposition you have for a small building and for a laboratory, you can imagine the kind of opposition people to have for a nuclear power plant. So this is going to be a factor. Whether we have suitable sites on nuclear power is something that we need to consider. We may or may not. I don't know whether we have done sufficient investigations. Financing, again, as Professor mentioned, the capital cost could be significant, but if you are going for a smaller power plant, the initial cost may not be that high. But if you are going for something like a 600 megawatt power plant, the cost could be around a couple of billions of dollars. Whether we would be able to finance such a large project is a question. Managing nuclear waste, there are three types of waste: high-level waste, which is a fuel that we remove from the reactor, which contains highly radioactive material. And usually the vendors, if you can come to an agreement with the vendor to take back your waste, we will not be able to, in a country like this, we will not be able to dispose of high-level waste within the country itself. So one option is to have an agreement with the vendor to supply the fuel and take away the high-level waste. But still we have to deal with the medium level and lower level waste. We'll have to find a suitable way of managing it. And the stability of grid is very important for safety of the nuclear power plant, because nuclear power plant need electrical power to run the safety systems. If there's a total failure of the grid, there are backup diesel generators, but then you have one less level of safety. So the stability of the grid is very important. We have had occasionally in the past few years a total failures of our system. But if you are going to have a nuclear power plant, we need to have a more stable grid. And certainly you need human resources for a project like this. If you are going to use nuclear power, you need the human resources. And even to decide whether you should use nuclear power or not, you need to have knowledgeable people. So our universities have been conducting programs. Our University of Morocco, we had a program on nuclear engineering, not a complete degree program, but the final year engineering students studied this as a subject, nuclear engineering as one of the subjects. So many of the engineers at the Ceylon University Board have been exposed to basics of nuclear engineering. In addition to that, the IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, also is conducting a number of training programs, including fellowships. And I believe some of our engineers have been trained in these programs. And at a later stage, once you decide to, if you decide to use nuclear power, then there'll be training that could be provided by the vendors. Then then I would also like to say a few things about radiation, because the public opinion is mostly based on the fear of radiation, probably because the way the technology was introduced into the world by through Hiroshima, the atomic bombs of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The moment you mention nuclear, the relationship that is established with Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the radiation, deaths, and so on. So fear of radiation is a major fact, but these are some information on radiation. All of us are exposed to natural background radiation. The unit that is used to measure radiation is called sievert or millisieverts. The average natural background is 2.4 millisieverts. So all of us are exposed to this kind of radiation from natural sources. Chest X-ray, the main source of radiation to human beings is from medical uses. A chest X-ray will give you about 0.08 millisievert. Whole body CT scan about 12 millisievert. I recently had to undergo a CT scan, so I received about 3 millisievert. Chernobyl liquidators, people who are cleaning up place, on the average this is 120. And the risk factor is, if you are exposed to 1 millisievert, which is the allowable limit for public exposure, your risk of getting cancer is about 1 in 20,000. Then one final slide about the approach. It is not doing nuclear is not an easy task. There are so many things that obviously there are so many aspects that you need to look at. IEA has developed an approach they call the milestone approach. This is a very short summary of a very comprehensive document. There are 3 milestones. One is whether you are in a position, you are ready to make a knowledgeable commitment for nuclear power. The second stage is whether you are ready to invite bids, and third stage is whether you are ready to commission. So for each milestone, there are so many conditions that you have to make. We are not yet at the position of the first milestone. I think Atomic Energy Authority, Atomic Energy Board, and CB are working towards it. It doesn't mean that we have decided to use nuclear power, but at least to be in a position to be able to make a knowledgeable commitment, we need to do a lot more. So there are 19 conditions, and these are some of them. Nuclear safety, financing, whether we have a required legislative framework, safety, framework, radiation protection, the grid, so many things. So Mr. Ranavira probably will explain a little bit more about what we are doing currently doing. Atomic Energy Board is currently doing along with the CB on these lines. But the bottom line is we are not in a position to say whether, number one, whether we need nuclear power or not. Depending on our future increase in the demand, we may or may not be. It may be possible to meet our future demand without having to use nuclear power. But if our demand for the future increases at a much rapid rate, it could be an option that we may have to consider. Then, even still, if it is still an option to be considered based on the expansion planning procedure, there are so many other factors that we may have to consider before deciding to use nuclear power. So that's all I want to present. I hope I didn't take too much of time. So thank you very much for your attention. And during the discussion stage, if there are anything I could say to clarify some of the things I mentioned, I'll be glad to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Prinath. It's a very good summary of the things that you talked to us. So let's invite Melinda. I need to make you. Thank you very much for sitting in here. I'm sure it will have a very good impact. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Actually, I am going to explain the ongoing nuclear power study and planning program of Sri Lankan context. Currently, I am working as a head of the project management unit to study the nuclear power option in Sri Lanka under the purview of Ministry of Power and Energy. So, if we make a quick glance throughout the global situation of the nuclear power generation, all of the five continent, they operate countries operating 32 countries operating nuclear power plants. At present, nearly 443 nuclear power reactors are operating. In North America, US, Canada, Mexico. In Europe, 18 countries operating. Our continent, 6 countries operating. Our neighbor countries such as India and Pakistan also operating nuclear power reactors. In addition, in Latin America, Brazil and Argentina, in African continent, South Africa, in Gulf area, Iran and United Arab Emirates currently operating nuclear power reactors for electricity generation. In addition, at present, newcomer countries like Turkey, Bangladesh, and Egypt, they are under constructing nuclear power reactors. Furthermore, at present, nearly 54 nuclear reactors are under construction level. More nuclear reactors are under construction at China, nearly 22. India is 7, Turkey is 4, South Korea is 3, likewise. In addition, our neighbor country like Bangladesh, they under constructing 2 reactors in the capacity of 1,200 megawatt electric. In addition, at present, there are hot topic is many environmentalists, energy economics discussing about the global warming and climate change. So in that perspective, International Atomic Energy Agency announced that nearly it should be 12 countries shown their interest to change their energy mix from coal or oil to nuclear. From Europe, Poland. Poland is a highly coal operating country. They're going to convert their energy mix based on nuclear. In addition, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, they are oil-rich countries. They concentrate to establish more nuclear reactors in next decade. In African continent, 7 countries. In our continent, Bangladesh and Indonesia also shown, but Indonesia is only concentrated about prototype reactor. So, according to the Sustainable Development Goal and that COP21 Paris Agreement or National Determinant Contribution or Carbon Neutrality by 2030 or net zero emission by 2050, that kind of topic, if we concentrated, actually 1 month ago, European Union Parliament get a very interesting decision that they issue a taxonomy for a newly established nuclear power plant and LNG plants, liquid nitrified gas reactors. So it is a very interesting topic because earlier many European countries going away from the new nuclear power establishment. Because after the Fukushima Daiichi explosion, Germany, Angela Merkel decided to phase out 8 reactors. In that perspective, Belgium and Netherlands also following some that footsteps. But 1 month ago, European Union issued a taxonomy for new nuclear and LNG plant. In that perspective, Netherlands, Sweden, Belgium, they officially notified that they are going to construct 2 nuclear reactors in each country. So it is a new trend in Europe. If we make a quick glance toward the characteristic of the power generation technologies, compare and contrast with the coal, nuclear, LNG, solar, photovoltaic, or wind offshore, significantly high construction duration is occupied for the nuclear power reactors. Solar and wind, it may be 1 year, LNG and coal, LNG for 2 years, coal for 4 years. If we concentrate about the available plant factor, nuclear is high with coal and LNG nearly 85%. In addition, that plant life is nearly 60 years for nuclear, 40 for coal, LNG 30 years, solar photovoltaic 25 years, wind offshore 25 years. But if we compare and contrast these figures, basically capital cost is high for nuclear, but operating and maintenance cost is significantly low with the other power sources. GHG emission perspective, nuclear is very limited, very few GHG emissions occurred. So in that perspective, nuclear is a competitive power source for electricity generation. Most of the energy economics concentrate about the payback period when selecting any power type, any new power reactor establishment, they concentrate about payback period. In that perspective, normally coal and gas, the payback period is around 2 to 3 years, but nuclear is a little bit high. It's around 7 to 8 years. It is a negative factor for nuclear. This is the our neighboring countries like India and Pakistan. Actually, India, they under constructing 7 reactors from Kalpiti to Kudankulam. The distance is around 204 kilometers. In Kudankulam, they constructing 2 nuclear reactors, and they already operating 2 reactors. In addition, they planning another 2 more reactors in the same site area. In Bangladesh, they near Bay of Bengal, they under constructing 2 reactors in the capacity of 1,200 megawatt electric. Both nuclear establishments constructed by Russian state-owned atomic energy corporation, Rosatom. They signing technical, political, and financial agreement with the government of India and Bangladesh for entire nuclear fuel cycle. It means front end as well as back end. This is the latest bird eye view of the under constructing a nuclear power plant in Ropur. That Ropur nuclear power plant, first reactor going to be commissioned in 2023 with the capacity of 1,200. Second reactor going to be connected to the electrical grid in 2024 with 1,200 megawatt electric. So that is a huge victory in the perspective of Bangladesh because Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, she mandated the Digital Bangladesh National Plan 10 years ago. So she signing agreement with Russian state-owned atomic energy corporation with the guidance of her husband, because her husband is the former chairman of the Bangladesh Atomic Energy Commission. Professor Mirza is now passed away. Is actually a PhD holder in nuclear physics. So those are the hidden truth of behind the screen of the development of nuclear in Bangladesh. So we have to study those kind of interesting facts from our neighbor countries. This is a kind of technical parameter from Indian and Bangladesh reactors. You can see that this is a little bit, yeah. Actually, you can see that Professor Prinath also mentioned about the levelized cost of electricity. When we calculate levelized cost of electricity, we normally assign a discount rate 3%, 7%, or 10% for the cost calculation. Basically, we consider the discount rate of 7. in that perspective, if we assume $1 is around 360 Sri Lankan rupees, currently Indian nuclear power reactors, they given electricity for the 15.13 in Sri Lankan rupees. In Bangladesh perspective, the projected levelized cost of electricity is around 18 to 25 Sri Lankan rupees. It is very cheap price when we compare and contrast about Sri Lankan electricity generation. Actually, it is only second to the hydropower generation in Sri Lankan context only. So those things we have to carefully concentrate if we take a strategic and knowledgeable decision on new nuclear establishment. In addition, you can see that construction cost is comparatively high when compared with other power establishment, because normally if we going to establish a 1000 megawatt nuclear reactor, we have to pay around 3.5 to 7.5 US billion. As all of you are aware that our port city entire project cost is around $2 billion. So normally, if we going to establish a 1000 megawatt reactor, it cost is 2 times higher than the total cost of the port city project. This is technical data. Professor Prinath also mentioned that if we load nuclear fuel for the one cycle, we can continuously run 12 months in Indian context, but Bangladesh context, they plan to run the one fuel load continuously 18 months. I heard from reliable source that Indian power reactors are also going to be operated for the 18 months period for the continuous continuous running with loading one fuel assemblies. So you can see that Indian Kudankulam nuclear reactors cooling by seawater. It means Indian Ocean cooled by Kudankulam nuclear reactors. But Bangladesh Ropur nuclear reactor, they're going to be that reactor is going to be cooled by the river Ganga. It means Pabna River with supporting artificial reservoir, because in drought season, river Ganga, the flowing of river Ganga is cutting by Indian government. At that time, Bangladesh have to face some problematic situation. In that perspective, they're going to use artificial reservoir as a coolant source for their nuclear power reactors. So if we going to establish a nuclear power plant, intergovernmental agreement can be utilized. In addition, a very important thing is long-term support and strong commitment is very important if we way forward will establish, well accomplished nuclear power program. National position, you can see that Sri Lanka is located in Indian Ocean. From our territory, from Kalpiti area, you can see the point of Kanyakumari in from 204 kilometers away from Sri Lankan territory. Kudankulam nuclear power reactors are operated. In addition, you can see that 23 nuclear power reactors operating in Indian Peninsula. In Bangladesh, 2 reactors are under constructing. In Pakistan, 6 nuclear reactors are operating. 1,200 2 reactors are operating in Karachi, and 4 reactors in the capacity of 300 megawatt operating in Punjab near Islamabad. I'm not going to explain the mechanism of the nuclear reactor, but nuclear is not a fully renewable type energy, but nuclear is kind of a clean and green energy source. Also very less emitting carbon and GHG gases. Economically competitive, I cannot say that nuclear is the most cheapest sources, but economically very competitive. And if we going for the nuclear power as an embarking country, we have to carefully planning after study the areas of socio-economic, environmental, industrial, technical, and legal aspect. In addition, public acceptance and awareness is a mandatory requirement to way forward the nuclear power program in very smart manner. If we concentrate about the major milestone of the nuclear power study and planning program in Sri Lanka, actually our professional engineers, scientists, and our policymakers concentrate about the nuclear power option since 1974. They actually at that time our Mahaveli complex also not developed. Only Lakshapana complex is supported to generate the electricity. At that time also our professionals concerned about the nuclear power options, but all the attempts have failed. In 1980s also some committees are appointed and consider about the options, but due to many global situations and political pressure, those attempts are failed. But in 2010, latter part of the 2009 and 2010, we get note to cabinet and the permanent approval from the Sri Lanka cabinet of ministers to way forward the pre-feasibility study to consider the nuclear power program in Sri Lanka. In 2010, at that time, Minister of Power and Energy officially notified in the IEA General Conference that Sri Lanka is commitment to seek possibilities of the nuclear power generation. In 2011, to the Minister of Power and Energy appointed the steering committee and 4 groups to way forward the feasibility study, including Professor K.K.Y.W. Pera, Professor Peanut Dance, and officials from Atomic Energy Authority, Ceylon Electricity Board, University of Motu, University of Peradeniya, so on and so forth. But unfortunately, after appointment of those committees, after 2 days, Fukushima Daiichi incident happened in 11th March 2011. So minister is also a little bit excited. So at that perspective, our program is whole, but HR development, training, obtaining training are continued. After in 2015, within the Ceylon Electricity Board lease cost long-term generation expansion plan, in a nuclear power option is included as an energy mix with nuclear scenario. In 2016, at that time, Cabinet Minister and State Minister ordered to way forward the nuclear power study and planning program with the assistance of International Atomic Energy Agency. Also, State Minister also attended to the meetings with the International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna with the team of professionals, including some professionals from CEB, Atomic Energy Authority, likewise. From 2016 to 2020, actually we conducted 11 national workshops with participation of 37 International Atomic Energy experts in Sri Lanka, nearly 300 professionals in the various disciplines from universities, Sri Lanka Atomic Energy Board, Atomic Energy Regulatory Council, Ceylon Electricity Board, financial experts, environmentalists, geologists, sociologists, many discipline professionals attended that course and gained the knowledge from the IAEA experts. In 2019, Secretary to the Minister of Power and Energy appointed a steering committee. It comprising the high-level policymakers of the various ministries, departments, and institutions. Also appointed the project management unit and 9 working groups, with including Sri Lanka Atomic Energy Board, Ceylon Electricity Board, and Sri Lanka Atomic Energy Regulatory Council. All entire world face some problematic situation due to COVID-19 pandemic situation. So we continue our programs with virtual format. also our country's political stability is not good at that period. Anyhow, we conducted the integrated nuclear infrastructure review mission in phase 1, Sri Lanka in April last year, with participation of 10 international atomic energy experts. And before conducting that mission, actually we draft a self-evaluation report with comprising the strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threat of this program in Sri Lankan context. And IA expert review and revise this report and analyze, identified the gaps, and they came here and they interview, face-to-face interview our professionals, and they actually submitted their recommendations in September 2022. Actually, this report officially handed over to our chairman, Professor Rosa. That report handed over by Deputy Director General of Nuclear Energy Department, Mr. Mikhail Chudaku. At that report, they clearly mentioned 26 recommendations, 6 suggestions, and 2 good practices to way forward our nuclear power study and planning program. So this is the one of the old picture that at that time minister is notified to the IAEA General Conference that seek possibilities of the nuclear power generation on behalf of Sri Lanka. Also in 2018, Deputy Director General of Russian State-owned Atomic Energy Corporation, Rosatom, Dr. His Excellency Nikolai Spassky came to Sri Lanka and meet His Excellency former President and shown their commitment to give an assistance to Sri Lanka. So in 2006, from 2016, we initiated technical cooperation program. Actually, this project, the main counterpart is Ceylon Electricity Board, second counterpart is Atomic Energy Board. Through this project, we actually establish NAPIO, Nuclear Energy Program Implementing Organization. There are 3 layers comprising the NAPIO. It means steering committee, PMU, and 9 working groups. So this NAPIO model, actually this is not a real NAPIO, this is kind of a shadow NAPIO. These groups and committees actually drafted reports, meetings, workshops, and discussions, and they given a very smart job to implement this project at present level. So this is the real IAEA NAPIO model. So I skip this slide. So as per the CB long-term generation perspective, nuclear is a viable option in terms of CO2 emission level, but in their generation plan, nuclear power is only identified as a scenario option. Nuclear law also very important because in 1970s, 80s, or 90s, nuclear means nuclear engineering or nuclear science. But after 2010, nuclear law and nuclear economics area is developed. So in that perspective, there are many international established nuclear legal instruments are mandated. So in that perspective, Sri Lanka have to be signed some conventions in terms of nuclear safety, security, safeguard, and liability. So Sri Lanka is already part of some conventions like Convention on Nuclear Safety, Convention on Early Notification of Nuclear Accident, Convention on Assistance in the case of nuclear accident or radiological emergency, so on and so forth. But Sri Lanka is still not signed any nuclear liability convention. So currently, Sri Lankan government discussing to collaborate with Russia to seek possibilities to get the technical assistance. So in that perspective, we have to sign Vienna Convention. In addition, our neighboring country, India, they operate in 22 nuclear reactors. Due to geological transboundary effect, we have to concern about our people and environment. In that perspective, we have to sign a convention on supplementary compensation of nuclear damage, because convention on supplementary compensation, it means CSC, India is part of this convention. In addition, if we going to establish any research reactor or nuclear power reactor, we have to sign the CPPNM, it means Convention on Physical Protection of Nuclear Material. So those conventions, actually main responsibility is going to Foreign Ministry, but Atomic Energy Authority have to technically justify whether it's suitable or not for the Sri Lankan context. In addition, before we sign any convention, we have to get the clearance or concurrence from the Honorable Attorney General. Professor Prinath also explained the IAEA milestone approach, but I quickly explain you. According to the IAEA milestone approach, they introduced 3 phases and 3 milestones. As in terms of phases, phase 1 mean consider, then prepare, then construct. In terms of milestone mean decide, contract, commission. Actually, at present, Sri Lankan situation is Sri Lanka has actually already passed the phase 1, consider phase. We have to take the strategic and knowledgeable decision. We already submitted our reports to the Ministry of Power and Energy with the recommendations of International Atomic Energy Agency. These reports have to be submitted to the Sri Lanka cabinet, then parliament debate, then again cabinet, and have to be notified the strategic and knowledgeable decision by His Excellency President. That is the procedure. As Professor Prinath has also explained, there are 19 milestones introduced by International Atomic Energy Agency to way forward the well-established, well-accomplished nuclear power program. In that perspective, Sri Lanka moderately developed 13 issues, but we are not developed the issues, major issues like nuclear safety, nuclear fuel cycle, including front end and back end. So radioactive waste management, nuclear safeguard, funding and financing, and procurement. But other issues we moderately develop, but we have to modify it in smart manner. So we last 6 years, we conducted many working group meetings, steering committee meetings, high-level policymaker convincing meeting, national workshops, international workshops, and steering committees. We explain the situations time to time to the Secretary, to the Minister of Power and Energy, Cabinet Ministers, so on and so forth. Also, we continuously conducted high-level policymaker discussion with the CB, LECO, Sri Lanka Atomic Energy Board, and Sri Lanka Atomic Energy Regulatory Council likewise. HR development also, capacity building also very important in this technology. Professor Prinath also explained those issues. Not like other technologies, nuclear power HR development is very important factor. We have to build up the competence in terms of HR development, knowledge plus skill plus attitude. If we go for a well-established nuclear power program, we have to develop the HR in the areas of engineering, scientific, technical, and sociological aspect. Earlier, 20 years ago, if we go for a nuclear power, we have to smartly develop only nuclear engineering and nuclear science area. But now, not like at that period, we have to develop quality assurance program, non-destructive evaluations program, nuclear law area, nuclear economics area, leadership and management area, psychological aspect, public acceptance areas, signing conventions, international nuclear treaties, likewise. So this area is very important. At present, we develop some level, but we have to develop it into well-established level. From 2013 to 2017, we conducted 2 national workshops and 1 international workshop with assistance of IAEA. 2018, we conducted 4 national workshops in terms of site selection, nuclear legal and regulatory, national position, nuclear safety and security. Likewise, in 2019, we conducted 3 national workshops with assistance of IAEA in terms of electricity grid and market, then funding and financing, and stakeholder involvement. In addition, we propose to establish a nuclear power education and training center in Sri Lanka. We actually identified the land next to the Atomic Energy Board premises. Also, we get some board approval, and we already proposed to the ministry as well. Also requested some technical assistance from Russian government and International Atomic Energy Agency. We plan to establish a research reactor, training simulator, full scope simulator, and some nuclear instrumentation laboratories, non-destructive evaluation laboratories, and thermal hydraulics, neutron activation and illicit laboratories likewise. But we need smooth financing options, as well as technical assistance from well-established nuclear power vendor countries to develop these facilities. That is the challenges. Also, at present, Japan Atomic Energy Agency continues to support to Sri Lanka. They given 5 kind of trainings to strengthen the capacity building development in the nuclear power technology area. In terms of site selection and evaluation process, Sri Lanka is faced a huge tsunami in 2004 with the magnitude of 9 from the Java Sumatra area. In addition, from Arabic Sea, there's some Macron effect from the Pakistan region, but it is not a risk for the Sri Lankan territory. In our studies with collaboration of Geological Survey and Mines Bureau, National Building Research Organization, Central Environmental Authority, Meteorology Department, NARA, those kind of professionals contributed. We initially identified 4 regions to establish a future nuclear installation in Sri Lankan context. You can see that Manatu Japna, Trinco, Batikolo, and Yalakuman area. But we have to carefully study those areas with not only technical aspect, but also sociological aspect. We have to clearly identify the regions. Actually, Sri Lanka is an island country. We cannot use river water as a coolant, so we have only option for sea water. So those kind of options we have to consider. Those are the technical aspect. I am not going to explain one by one. Also, at present, Sri Lanka have some technical support organizations. As an example, National Center for Non-Destructive Testing, they develop some quality assurance techniques to evaluate detect discontinuities in boilers, pressure vessels, turbines in non-nuclear establishment as well. These options can be utilized even for the nuclear option as well in future. Also, currently, Atomic Energy Board and Atomic Energy Regulatory Council conduct environmental protection, because if nuclear accident happen, it radioactive material dispersed through the air, water, soil, and biota. So we have to continuously monitor. In addition, emergency response and preparedness activities is also very important. We have a national plan. That plan is approved by the Disaster Management Center. So if we establish a research reactor or nuclear power reactor, this emergency response plan have to be developed. In terms of electricity grid and transmission network, Sri Lankan grid is very isolated. CB generation plan, nuclear is identified as only a scenario option. Latest draft expansion plan, nuclear is considered beyond 2040, but before previous plans, it identified beyond 2030, but a little bit confused about the CB options and their proposals. It's some problematic for the professionals from the Sri Lankan Atomic Energy Board people as well. At present, electricity generation is total generation is around 4,000, but peak demand is around 2,400. solar wind generation going to be explained at the current government policies. Government policies to reduce the thermal power plants. Nuclear is identified only as a scenario. This is some graphs shown in the generation plan, latest generation plan they propose. So a little bit weird about their proposals because they only considered 600 megawatt electrical reactors. Those reactors are not operated at present world. Actually, they consider 600 megawatt reactor, which introduced by Westinghouse nuclear electric company in USA in 2010. These reactors are now not produced by them, so it is outdated reactor. In addition, in current perspective, we can also consider about the inherently safe small and medium scale nuclear power reactors, small modular reactors with capacities ranging from 300 to 400. Actually, US, UK, French, Russians, they develop micro reactors as well from the scale of 5 to 50 megawatt electricals. Small modular reactors is standard range is from 50 to 300. Those reactors are developed, smart reactor developed by Koreans, Karam reactor developed by Argentina, Rolls-Royce reactor developed by British, NuScale reactor developed by USA, likewise. So they develop, even Bill Gates also invested in huge amount of money for the innovations and development of nuclear power reactors. Even Warren Buffett, he have, I think, as I know, he have 2 nuclear power reactors in USA. So marginal cost is high, capital investment is high, but profitable margin also very broad, but operation and maintenance also very low. So in addition, current government policies to remarkable trend towards the way to 70% renewable energy target in Sri Lankan context. In that context, we can include nuclear as a clean and green energy source, because nuclear is not a fully renewable, but nuclear is a halfly renewable, because used fuel can be used again with mixing plutonium. Used fuel mix with plutonium and then they produce uranium mix oxide, and again this reprocessing fuel can be utilized in the nuclear power reactor. In that perspective, nuclear is a kind of a clean and green energy. We urge to the government to include nuclear in this 70% target as well. So, we partially criticize CB long-term generation expansion plan, but we suggest to the CB to include, to study these options in their studies, approximately 2 units from 300 megawatt electrical scale to the present national grid. If we interconnected with India, we can HVDC interconnection, also discussing level HVDC interconnection, high voltage direct current line. So if we going interconnect with India, then we can think about the 1,000 to 1,200 megawatt electrical reactors. But at present, Sri Lankan grid is very isolated. We can think about 300 megawatt reactors, 2 units at present level. In addition, some experts suggest to floating nuclear power reactors in the scale of 110 megawatt electrical, because Russian, they have this kind of reactors. But this small modular reactor, floating reactor, construction duration is very low, 4 to 5 years. Even floating nuclear power reactors also option is not strongly suggested by IAEA, because it operated under the purview of international maritime law. It is a little bit weird. So we can think about the small modular reactor option is as the best option in Sri Lankan country. We can cost calculation, what are the exclusion zone, land area requirement, budgeting, those kind of things. I compare and contrast through these graphs. I'm not going to explaining in detail. IAEA introduced many energy system assessment tool, message made, pin plan, empower. CEB also used 2 kind of energy assessment tools provided by Atomic Energy Agency. So this is French government. They consider 6 scenarios in their future electricity generation plan. I think 2 months ago, French president officially notified that they selected the NO3 plan. They're going to reduce 50 nuclear power into 50% range. But now their full capacity is around 70%. But they reduced the nuclear power, but they're going to establish 14 kind of nuclear reactor large scale with small modular reactors in next decade. I'm a little bit going to explain about the how integrated nuclear power infrastructure re-emission resource will be used in Sri Lanka. So we, as I previously explained you, we conducted our inner PACE-1 mission in April last year with the participation of 10 IE experts. They conducted this mission and they handed over their recommendations to our chairman, Professor Rosa. And you can see that as per the IEA inner mission map, Sri Lanka also included 34 inner missions conducted in 25 member states in worldwide by the IAEA. Sri Lanka also in the list. And as per the inner process, we already prepared self-evaluation report. We already conducted the inner mission. We have to develop the integrated work plan with in collaboration with International Atomic Energy Agency in March or April this year. So that is the challenge. This is the officially inner mission report handover process in last general conference in IAEA. So this is the way we have to way forward our activities as an integrated approach with the support of International Atomic Energy Agency. Also, we cannot take a strategic and knowledgeable decision by ourselves. It have to be gone through the cabinet, Sri Lanka Parliament, then again cabinet. That decision have to be officially notified by the Chief President. That is the way. So we actually drafted some action plan. We have to negotiate with a well-established nuclear power vendor country. It should be aligned with our political agenda as well, because nuclear is a little bit in line with the political approach. We have to establish a nuclear power education and training facility to strengthen our HR development. In addition, we have to sign international legal instrument conventions. We have to strengthen the nuclear safety, security, safeguard, and liability activities, HR development. Also, we have to carefully analyze the site selection, site characterization aspect. So that is the way. As a country, we have challenges. We have to get 300 and nearly 400 megawatt electricity for the ongoing port city development program. Currently, our train system is using diesel locomotive train system, but we have to convert our train system into electrified. It needs more than 200 megawatt electricity. In addition, light rail train system is now stopped, but government going to be initiate again that LRT system. If we going for the LRT, we need another 200 electricity. In addition, I don't know whether it continue or not, the high voltage DC line. If it is continued, we can go think about large reactors. So the domestic consumption electricity also increase. So in that perspective, nuclear option can be considered within the energy mix of Sri Lanka, but not by instance. I think if we going our homework in a smart manner, we can think about the nuclear dream within next 8 to 10 years. That is my talk. Thank you very much. Actually, finally, I have to mention the quotes from great Albert Einstein. The formulation of a problem is often more essential than its solution. Thank you very much.
Malinder, thank you so much for doing a very detailed presentation. I was just going to ask because in the audience, there are several scientists who are top scientists interested in the subject. And also there may be people who will be listening to this in the recorded version. And just in case, if somebody of them wanted to communicate with you, I can always ask permission from you whether I should release your email.
Okay, no problem. If you want, I can share my presentation as well. No
Yeah,
problem.
it's already recorded, so it will go as a video. You'll get a link as well.
Okay.
But that way you will probably be able to have a better crowd in the sense, say in medical projects, we include customers like patients. So they are in the project planning itself. So even they are scientists, they can get included as public so that you get public reflection.
Okay.
So that will be strong as well. So if that's okay, let's keep that an option. And Lakshman Disanag is going to talk next. And so the time is running out. I think we might have to come up with a plan for discussion, strong discussion later. So it's probably better if I don't think there'll be enough time for a full discussion today. So we will allow Lakshman to discuss, present as well. And if there's no time, we will take the full discussion with the other people's comments and all your discussions with our other participants at a later date, if that's all right with you, Malindra. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay.
It's okay. It's okay. No problem.
Yeah. Okay. Lakshman, can I get you to do your presentation? I think you're there just a second. I have to get to.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
got it there. Great.
I'm
Thank
ready.
you.
Yeah. Okay. Is it okay, Chula?
Yeah, you can talk. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, okay.
I have not introduced you, Lakshman. Everybody knows you, but just to say, you're one of the top scientists in the country and in physics, and you had an interest on this. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Chula. I will take maximum maybe 10 minutes. I have some payload slides. First of all, I should thank the two previous speakers for setting the background up, and especially Professor Prinath Dayas, who's a very senior person in this field, and Mr. Malinda, also active young scientist today in Sri Lanka. So let me start. Now I am going to discuss the other side of the nuclear story. Right. Nuclear power is a great option for the future of our electricity needs. Future, within quotes. However, there are some major risks and disadvantages of nuclear energy to seriously consider before we decide whether this power source is the best form of environment-friendly and affordable energy for our future, especially starting at the present time. Okay, one of the factors that previous two speakers also discussed is the cost of nuclear power installation. The initial cost is very high compared to all other power sources. And also the waste management and the security and safety aspects, whether Sri Lankan society today with the economic crisis and political instability can even start this kind of thing is a major issue. But it is very good. I'm very happy that we are all set, we are prepared to undertake, thanks to our Atomic Energy Authority and Atomic Energy Board at present, and they have done quite a lot of work. So anytime we are ready to take it over, but I should say that this is not the correct time to even start this kind of installation, because of the serious accidents, three major accidents that happened in the past with severe casualties and damage, and these are unlike other accidents, these are long-term effects. If you're exposed to nuclear radiation, it's not only you, but your future generation will also affect. So these are very unique kind of situation. Nuclear accidents is completely different from other accidents. These are very long-term serious repercussions of these exposures. And another main area that we have to be concerned, and which was discussed by the previous two speakers, is the nuclear waste, how to handle it. I remember Professor Dharmadas was saying, in a country where normal wastage cannot be handled, how do we handle nuclear waste? So these are serious issues to be considered in the case of nuclear power, handling the radioactive waste. Security threat. Now we have had recently the Easter Sunday attack, and then the Aragalaya, and previously the ethnic war. And politically, Sri Lanka is not in a situation even to start this kind of project from the safety aspect. And also, this is a long-term thing. Uranium fuel will be available, but the price will probably go up in the future because of the limited supplies. And during a terrorist attack, for example, in a country like Sri Lanka, in a present political setup, nuclear plants can be a vulnerable target for this group of. So these are the three nuclear disasters that we already discussed by the previous speakers: Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island in the USA, Chernobyl in Russia, and Fukushima in Japan. Now, these nuclear disasters are, we don't know when they will occur. They are really serious accidents, and whatever the way you plan it to suppress, there's a plenty of chance that these things can happen. So there are two sets of countries. Some want to go for nuclear, some are closing down their nuclear. And it's very interesting to learn from Milinda's presentation. In Germany, the chancellor was a physicist. She decided to close down all the nuclear power plants. In Bangladesh, Prime Minister's husband is a physicist. They decided to go for it. Okay. So we have to analyze why these two kind of analysis by the physics people. Okay, so there are countries opposing the setting up of nuclear power plants. Several European countries, Germany, Denmark, and other. And the cost of nuclear power, about $6,000 per kilowatt of capacity at the present rate. It is quite in the expensive category. Sustainable future. Now, if we come into agreement with a supplier, it has to be a long-term contract, because nuclear waste is also within the agenda, and whether those companies will survive for that kind of long time. So these are the issues. So there has to be international conventions covering this, I hope. Okay, but I agree that we must have the nuclear power in our cards, because eventually, maybe after 10 years or so, there'll be a big, huge demand for electricity in Sri Lanka. So we must be prepared for that. But this is not the correct time to initiate this kind of thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Lakshman, for putting the balance in the right scale. And it's time for really discussion, but I will very strongly suggest that we link up with Malinda, and then whoever who is interested, and then take it forward with further discussions and all that, because it will be a strength for him as well to develop the right kind of decision for the future. So, because studying something and assessing something is not bad, because we all learn about it. Implementing now or when or after is a different story, but still it's worth analyzing all aspects. So It's a question time, and Kirti had a question. Kirti, yeah. Kirti?
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, I
Can you
think
see me?
Lakshman, you have to bring your slides down. Just say stop.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, Kirti, yes.
So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. First of all, I think Lakshman said this background very nicely for my question. So thank you, Lakshman, as well. Before I ask my question, can I give a bit of my background, please? I'll take only 2 minutes. I think one of the speakers mentioned Rolls-Royce nuclear energy. As you know, in the United Kingdom, there is only one company, only one organization allowed to develop nuclear energy, that is Rolls-Royce. And I worked for Rolls-Royce for 34 years. So that's one factor. The second factor is perhaps more important. I was one of the few people in Sri Lanka who studied nuclear physics a long time ago. I did my MSc in nuclear physics at Edinburgh University, and people like Professor Higgs, who got the Nobel Prize in 2013, was working there at the time. So I'm not talking out of ignorance, I'm talking with intelligence and knowledge. The Institute of, and also one of the speakers mentioned that when it comes to nuclear power, we have to consider economics, the resources, safety, all kinds of things. There's an institute called the Institute of Energy Economics, and something in the USA. In February 2022, that's less than a year ago, they stated that nuclear physics, nuclear energy is not the way forward in the next 20, 30 years. They said we must go for renewable energy, solar power, wind power, hydroelectricity. Sri Lanka has all these things: solar, nuclear, sorry, not nuclear, solar, wind power, and hydroelectricity. So Sri Lanka seems to be going in the opposite direction to USA. That is one factor. The other factor is when we implement any project, we must consider all the stages of the project. And one of the speakers very correctly identified various stages 1, 2, 3, and 4. Sorry, 3. But the last stage, the disposal stage, is not considered. Now that's for nuclear power, disposal is the most critical factor. In fact, I have visited nuclear power plants in the United Kingdom. They are very concerned about that in the Britain. So we must really consider all the stages for the long-term future. Sri Lanka seems to be making decisions based on short-term vision without taking into long-term aspects. So I sincerely request we should consider all long-term effects, long-term risks. In the past, Sri Lanka has made a lot of decisions looking at the short-term issues, and we had to pay for them for many, many years. I wouldn't go into details. I believe this is one of those things. Sri Lanka is trying to jump in without thinking too hard because they can see some advantages in the short term. But in the long term, I believe it's a very serious problem. Coming back, my question is, when IEEFA US concluded that nuclear energy is not the way forward, it's renewable energy, to the speakers, my question is, why are we not comparing with renewable energy? I saw the comparison with coal and gas, but I didn't see any comparison with renewable energy. So that's my question. Thank you very much.
Any comments from the speakers? Or any other questions?
Yes, Kirti, thank you for your clarification. Yes, we should have actually compared with other renewables, solar, wind, and all, because we have plenty of sunshine, and it's in the CEB generation plan. So that kind of a cost comparison is very vital. Yeah.
I think Prinath wants to answer. Prinath, yes, Prinath.
Yeah, thank you. I think Sri Lanka is considering renewables. The government policy right now is to make it 70% renewable. But technically, personally, I don't think that is technically feasible. We should go for renewables, definitely, to the maximum possible extent. But when you look at the technical and economic characteristics of renewables, I don't think 70% is possible. What we need is the optimum mix of all energy sources, not just renewables. To give you just one example, now currently Sri Lanka has a peak energy, our peak demand for electricity is in the night. We have a peak between 6:30 and 7:30, between 6:30 to about 9:30 in the evening. And the solar output is 0. So any amount of solar we have will not contribute to the power demand, because our power plant should be able to meet the power demand and the energy demand both. So definitely there's a role for renewables, but there's a limit that we can develop. Now, with regard to nuclear, this is my personal view. Of course, different organizations have different views. I mean, like say, certain countries have decided not to use nuclear power, like Germany, whereas some other countries have decided to use nuclear. Some organizations may say that nuclear power is not the future, but some other countries, some other organizations may have a different view. But as far as Sri Lanka is concerned, we are not in a position to decide whether we should use nuclear power. We certainly are not in a position to do that. So we have two options. Either decide now itself, we don't need nuclear power at any time in the future. Right? We decide now itself, we are not going to use nuclear power, so that means we don't have to do anything at all in that area. The second option we have is to realize that there may be a possibility of having to use nuclear power in the future. We don't know yet, we may or may not, but be prepared in case that need arises. So I think these are the two options we have. If we decide not to use nuclear power now itself, that's one decision, we don't have to do anything. But if you want to keep this option open, there are certain things that we have to do, and I think that is what Atomic Energy Board is trying to do. But we certainly are not in a position to decide that we should use nuclear power. Thank you.
Yeah, Nilmini.
Can I come in, because that answer? Thank you very much, Prina. Can I shortly come in? I think, Prina, thank you very much for clarification. I do agree that we need a mixture of energy sources, energy products. At the same time, I am confident that without nuclear power, we can find the right balance with various types of different energy systems. And also, I think we should not compare us with developed countries like France or Germany or UK. We are a very small country with a very small budget, very small financial capabilities. So we can only take a limited amount of risks. So we should not take any risk which we cannot afford. Now, that reminds me something that I have seen that occasionally, I'm not suggesting anybody here has done it. There is, I think there's a quotation given by, I believe it was Mark Twain and Benjamin Disraeli. Lies, damn lies, and statistics. What they said was that sometimes people use statistics or data to consolidate fairly weak arguments. I'm not saying anybody has done it here, by the way. So we have to be very careful when people take bits and pieces out of context and try to say, look, this is a good thing. For example, Russia or China will try to sell their products. So they want to sell their products. So they will be very keen to sell us nuclear power plants. But is that the right thing for Sri Lanka? So that's all I want to say. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, thank you, Kirti. But that's why I suggested, look, Melinda is in the front line on this. So it's better we link up with him and do the pros and cons. So they give all the evidence to make a correct decision. Nilmini, next question here. Sorry about the delay, Nilmini.
That's okay. Thank you so much. This is such a fascinating topic and an extremely important one. Thank you for all the speakers. It was very technical stuff. So Melinda's presentation in particular was quite technical. And I was just wondering whether it's possible to have access to the slides to be able to kind of understand it a bit better, as well as the recording. I know that's going to be available. So if it's possible to have a look at Melinda's presentation, that'd be really, really good. That's one kind of statement.
I think Melinda
question.
already agreed. I'll ask him to email it to me and then I will distribute it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. There's one slide in particular that I was interested in, and that's the one where you've got the milestones, Melinda. You've got the 19 nuclear infrastructure issues in Sri Lanka, and you've got the milestones from that organization, and it's got on the right hand side you've got not developed issues, and the red marks on there, it's got nuclear safety, nuclear fuel cycle, radioactive waste management, nuclear safeguards, funding and financing, procurement, all of that are under the not developed column. So if they're not developed fully, why is it going to decision? That's the question. So, and also what's the time scale for the decision making in the cabinet? That's the other thing. Those are the two questions I had really.
I think Melinda or Prinath, you want to answer? Because
Yula, I have a question now. This is a serious topic that needs more careful debate, and I propose that we do it some other time. I have many issues I want to raise, but that's going to take some time.
Yes, Oliver, I've got only about 10 minutes more, and I think it's best that we all link up with Melinda, discuss whatever, and come out with the pros and cons again, so that having a good document in relation to all this will benefit everybody, whether we are going to have nuclear power in another 10 years' time or whatever, because as the nuclear energy requirement was shown, that if we don't have enough electricity, say we are halfway down to become a developed country, maybe there may be a need. So assessing is a good thing to do. So that's why the whole input is good. Thank you, Oliver. Yes, Lakshman, you raised the hand as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Chula. As Oliver suggested, I think we should devote next Sunday also for this one, if possible, all these speakers. And my question to Dr. Prinath is, we have plenty of solar. Let's try to use solar to the maximum possible limit. In the night, now there are technologies, storage batteries being developed with high tech, and eventually they will be low cost with time compared to the cost of a nuclear power plant. If each house in Sri Lanka can have a solar panel and an inverter and a battery off-grid system, I think we can cut down a lot of the domestic power use by solar. You charge during the daytime, you use it during the night. So I think we have to be aware of these new technologies, batteries and inverters and smart grids. I think the smart grid is needed for nuclear, definitely. And why not for off-grid or on-grid solar systems? If you compare the cost comparison, having storage batteries, inverters, and a smart grid using solar and wind renewables will be much more cheaper and much more latest technology. Prinath, I would like to listen to Prinath.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, yes and no. In the sense, okay, it could be cheaper, it could be more expensive, which we don't know. Energy storage in bulk is expensive. So the only way to determine now, okay, nuclear power, it's true, the capital cost is very high, but the fuel cost is so low. That's why it makes it economical, right? Whereas in other types of power plants, the capital cost is low, but the fuel cost is high. So when you look at the overall cost, these are the figures I gave earlier. They are competitive. Nuclear cost of nuclear power generation is competitive with other options even though the initial capital cost is high. The reason is the low fuel cost. Whether solar with storage or nuclear is more expensive, which one will be more expensive can be determined only by a very detailed study. And that is a part of the studies that are the kind of studies that are carried out by the Ceylon Electricity Board using well-established methodologies. So they are looking at all possible options, all possible scenarios, right? And then they will come out with the best option for the country. This is what they are expected to do. Whether they are doing it properly or not is another issue. But that is the way to go. Without a proper study, I mean, we cannot base this on our personal views, right? We all of us have our biases. Some of us probably think nuclear is the way to go. Some of us might think solar is the way to go. But just as scientists, this has to be done scientifically and using well-established methodologies. Only we could determine what is more economical. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rinath, absolutely right. That's why I thought it's better that we discuss this further. And actually, it's good if some of you have already expressed interest. Just join up with Melinda and Prinath, and then that will help them as well to assess it properly and write up the proposals, etc. So that even if it's going to get deferred, they will have enough ammunition to do that. That is why, isn't it? So anyway, because Nilbini, you raised the hand again.
Yes, because I didn't hear from Melinda with regard to the timescales and the decision making yet, and also in relation to that SWOT analysis that was done in April 2022 and the report from September 2022. Is it possible to see those documents as well?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ms. Nilmini, for your very fruitful question. Actually, we not only conduct SWOT analysis, we also conduct a PESTEL analysis, political, economical, social, environmental, technical. Likewise, a broad range analysis done throughout our reports, through the comprehensive report and self-evaluation report. Within a question you asked that in Sri Lankan context, we significantly developed 13 issues, but we haven't not developed 6 issues. Actually, within our reports and the IA recommendations, they mentioned that how we overcome these challenges, how we overcome the financing option, as an example. If we sign an intergovernmental agreement with a well-established nuclear power vendor country or company, we can select what are the most suitable and viable financing option for a new nuclear installation in Sri Lanka. How we develop our HR development capability, how we develop our emergency response plan, how we develop our site selection characterization issues. So likewise, within our self-evaluation report and comprehensive report, as well as the IA recommendations, we clearly mentioned that how we overcome the challenges and the future programs. So that is the way. If you can read our documents, if you wish to read those documents, I can share those 2 documents, our self-evaluation reports and IA recommendations, because even if you access the IA website, it is public document. You can access to the IA website, or if you send your email address, then I can share those reports. It is not a problem.
Melinda, if you send it to me, all those documents, I can actually send it with the recording as well at the same time, so that everybody will get those documents to be reviewed as well if they want.
Okay.
And then
no problem. It is public document. No problem.
Yeah. So public documents only. So if you can have a public document, just send me the copies, then I can just circulate it.
Yeah. So,
no problem. I think that will be a very good way to go forward and be more.
And I want to given my views for the comments given by Mr. Kirti. So I am not agreed his comments, because Germany, in terms of German situation, Angela Merkel shut down nuclear reactors, but she get electricity from France through the European common grid. France generate electricity from more than 80% from nuclear. It is a very funny political decision. taken by German Angela Merkel, because she is a physics PhD holder, but she is a politician. She have to get the votes from the Green Party. She have to balance the Green Party votes. It is not a technical decision, it's a political decision. Okay, and now Germany faces very huge trouble in this situation. At present, Germany going to extend the remaining nuclear power plants through the parliament approval. Also, German professionals protest about the political decision at now. So, German think about the new nuclear power plant now. That is the latest situation. You can update through the World Nuclear News. In addition, Poland, Professor Lakshman Disanak mentioned that Poland totally close up the nuclear power. It is totally false facts, Professor Lakshman. Because Poland, now they're going to completely close the coal power plant, and they going to sign the agreement with Westinghouse, USA. They're going to establish large 4 nuclear reactors with the collaborations of Westinghouse, USA, and KEPCO, Korea Electric Power Company. So you have to update those information.
Yeah. Poland maybe is I got it wrongly. Yeah, but
that is
there are a lot
the
of
latest news.
Can I say a few words? Obviously, Malinda is raising the information, making statement based on its information. May I say something? I lived in Germany for 10 years. I worked with the Germans. I worked in the German industry. And I don't know personally Angela Merkel, but I know very well her activities and behaviors. Now, Germany is I believe, the world's second biggest economy, I think. Is it second or third? They have 200 million people. For them, spending on a nuclear power plant is only a small fraction of their annual budget. So we should never compare the way the decisions are made within Germany with Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is a tiny economy. We cannot take huge risks. We have taken risks in the past, we have paid the penalty. And that is why we are nearly bankrupt. So please do not compare with big countries like Germany. I can provide the evidence. I lived in Germany, I worked in Germany, I know they are thinking. So that's all I can say. And also the energy production, energy management, we really must consider all aspects, as you quite rightly said, socio-economic factors, not only technical, and also technical aspects as well. And also, in any project, we must consider the closure of the project at the end, even if it is in 25, 30 years' time. Has anybody considered closure of the nuclear power industry at the end of the project? Can you tell me what is the half-life of plutonium-235? It's 700 million years. It's not easy to manage that. So please think about these things.
Thank you for all the comments. Actually, it's nearly 2 hours now, and it's quite difficult for us to come to any conclusion because we really need more scientific backup and discussion in a kind of assessment. So I can actually circulate the documents and everything. If you want to take up, we can take it next week or the following week so that people have time to read all the documents and then make a different kind of approach. So we have a proper assessment, because this is not going to be an immediate decision anyway, because of the various milestones you have to follow. But developing a good scientific document one way or the other doesn't matter. It is a good background for the country to take up in the future even. So I think it's a good thing to assess it properly. So we can be just the public giving their opinion or whatever, but having a better scientific opinion will be better, isn't it? Lakshman, what do you say?
Yeah. I think we should continue next Sunday or the Sunday after that week.
Yeah, shall we make it 2 weeks so that everybody has time to read the
Okay.
documents
Yeah,
and everything
definitely.
else and circulate?
For me, I think it will be better in 2 weeks' time.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do in 2 weeks' time. Please, if you want to contact, yeah.
Well, one more point regarding Dr. Prinath's comment.
Yeah.
I think we should not give up nuclear preparation.
No. We should assess it properly. We should assess it properly, I think.
Yeah.
I think having a very strong document with all the evidence and everything, and also saying, even if you say it's not suitable at this time, that is still good to have all that assessment, because then it will, somebody in the future, if there's a need, they can take it up from there. That's why I'm saying it's a good thing to do that. Yeah.
We must have a strong and well-equipped atomic energy board. And
Yeah. So as I know, there are lots of, there are few scientists here and who will also read, who will be able to do a very positive or negative comment. Both will be valid for a good document. So yes, I think it's a good opportunity for us to get engaged in a proper way rather than just making against or whatever, and look at more scientifically. So we'll meet in 2 weeks' time on this subject, and I asked Melinda and Prinath to send me the documents that needs to be circulated, say, within the 2 days, and then I will send it with the recording, and then they will have time to, everybody will have time to record it, and I'll say that we are meeting in 2 weeks' time again as well. If that's all right. Thank you all. Thank you so much. It's been a very good meeting today. And
I sent you my presentation. Sorry.
yeah, send the presentations as well.
Yeah. Do you need anything else from me?
Any other documents that you think irrelevant for this discussion? Because I think having a very strong viewpoint scientifically, one way or the other, it doesn't matter, will help to make the correct decision and not just political. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you all. Sorry about the time's gone, is nearly 2 hours on the subject. Thank you all. See you again. Yeah, good night.
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks. Bye.
Good night.